This week, in a pivotal clash, the rebels, once aggressive, have now only one army to advance with, the belligerent John Bell Hood. He has an unenviable task, to take on a force far greater than his own, a task shared by General Lee, General Early, and every other Confederate commander. The question is, can he do what once came so easily at Chancellorsville, Winchester, and Bull Run? Mud. Given the hordes of modern war of musket balls and artillery shells, has the mere combination of dirt and water continued to plague armies? General Hood has been fighting with the mud, trying to advance quickly. While General Schofield has to deal with the same weather, his force is more agile. The Union reached Columbia first, and even though they were forced to fall back across Duck River, they still held the better position. General Thomas, Schofield's superior, wants time. The 16th Corps is moving to his side, just a couple more days, and he will have an unbeatable force. He only gets one. And by 0200 on the 29th, the rebels cross the creek. Schofield again pulls back, this time to Spring Hill. This splits his force. The 2nd Division of the 4th Corps is too quick, and a gap forms. A gap General Nathan Bedford Forrest wishes to exploit. Thanks to the surveillance of the 2nd Brigade of the 3rd Division, this doesn't come as a surprise, and the 4th Corps commander, General Stanley, understands the precarious position he has placed himself in. With time of the essence, Forrest charges as soon as he is in range, a mere brigade advancing against a division. His repulsion as more of his cavalry arrives, he dismounts and begins a much slower advance. At 1600 hour, the famed rebel raider expended the last of his ammunition, handing the course of battle to General Cheatham and his Confederate Corps. The victorious General Claiborne strikes south of Spring Hill, engaging with Brigadier Luther Bradley's brigade, and Bradley holds. His men repulse Claiborne not once but twice. On the 3rd assault, they are flanked and fall back, Bradley being on death's door. Base Division, meant to act in parallel with Claiborne, gets lost, as does General Stuart. When they are recalled and pointed in the correct direction, it's too late. Night has set in. Hood has lost his chance. He attempts night assaults, but his men have been awake for over 20 hours. He can't move them. The Federals are another story. They pull back to Franklin, a third retreat, unmolested by Hood. While Hood can't stop them, Forrest tries, and fails. He doesn't have the manpower or supply. As the Union falls into Franklin, they take up the trenches and fieldworks left behind from 1863. They'll have to wait to cross the Harpeth River. They left their bridging equipment behind at Columbia. To cross the 30th would mean surrendering their baggage train and artillery. The sun rises on the 30th, and Hood begins the pursuit of Schofield. He needs to beat the Army of the Ohio before it links with the Army of the Cumberland. His force doesn't arrive till noon. And what they see is a dug-in enemy lying anchored by the Harpeth River. Any hope of an easy victory or even a battle on equal terms is gone. But Hood knows that any hope for success must mean battle before his opponents join forces. He orders an advance. Generals caution him, but at 1600 he orders the advance. His charge will be without Lee's corps, with only 34 minutes of sunlight. They strike the advance force of Wagner's division. 3,000 new men find themselves surrounded and begin to break, fleeing. The Confederates in close pursuit paralyze our infantry, owing to fire on their brothers in arms. Luckily, General Opdyke had predicted this and had positioned himself behind the valuable Carter House. His veterans form up and charge into the Gray Horde. I saw Opdyke near the center of his line, urging his men forward. I gave the colonel no orders as I saw him engaged in doing the very thing to save us, to get possession of our line again. Stanley is wounded, but Opdyke's men don't falter. With pickaxes, bayonets, rifle butts, they fight hand to hand and push the rebels out of the breach. The excellent general himself joins the brawl, bashing Confederates with his pistol until it breaks, where he then grabs a musket to continue clubbing. Successive strike on the right and left fail. Now under artillery fire and rifle volleys, entire Confederate companies fall. The battered brigades of Hood are unable to even pierce the Union line. Even Forrest faltered. They crossed the Harpeth River hoping to encircle the engagement of Schofield, but he runs across General Wilson and the Blue Cavalry. He outnumbers them, but they make good use of their repeating rifles and push Forrest back across the river. In a final desperate attempt, Hood orders Johnson's division to advance. In darkness, loses sight of its target, and at 1900, when they launch the final assault, they are decimated. The battle comes to a close. The Confederate Army of Tennessee is gutted. General Claiborne was killed, the best of the division commanders. 6 other generals are lost. General Gordon was captured and another 6 are wounded. The Union suffered only Stanley wounded. Hood's army is now smaller than Schofield's, and if counterattacked, might have disintegrated. But Schofield decides to stick to his orders. He will fall back to Thomas. Hood, unwilling or unable to admit defeat, continues the pursuit. Both armies arrive at Nashville. Hood entrenches around the city, knowing he doesn't have the strength to storm the capital. He hopes to bleed his opponents dry. Hood's plan depended on Thomas acting as Hood desired, attacking as impetuously as Hood attacked at Franklin. George Thomas, however, was not John Hood. Hood has met his match in Sherman, Schofield, and it's time he got a taste of Thomas. Fire explodes out of the boiler of the Greyhound. The steamer rocks from side to side. The assassination attempt has failed. The Greyhound is the HQ of General Benjamin Butler, who just took on General Schneck and Rear Admiral David Dixon Porter. Moving northwest to Loudoun County, Virginia, the second burning begins. Cavalry Commander Merritt has moved to raise the county to the ground to starve the Grey Ghost Mosby into surrender. The destruction is vast, but Mosby never calls his Rangers to battle. The state of West Virginia sees further skirmishing without significant action. State seeing far more of the war is Georgia. Sherman is now halfway to Savannah, Georgia. As earlier said, this target was far away, but without opposition, it's just a question of how fast can he march. The 26th to the 28th sees the two sides cavalry skirmish, tarring out Wheeler and Kilpatrick. They rest until the 1st of December, move towards Waynesboro, and push the rebels out of Rocky Creek. Interrupting Sherman's main march, let's talk of an amphibious advance. General John P. Hatch, the guy from South Mountain, who with 5,000 advances into South Carolina. The coastal division he commands begins to destroy rebel infrastructure. This carries on till the 30th when he comes across rebel defenses. After a failed assault by the 54th and 55th Massachusetts Infantry, he pulls back 750 men fewer. As the horsemen do whatever they call battle, I think it's ballet, Sherman bears witness to the horrors of the Confederate camp entering Millen and Camp Lawton. There's barely any shelter. Medieval stocks for humiliating prisoners, and a burial pit merely marked 650 buried here. From American triumph to an American embarrassment in the West, there's been an ongoing war between the U.S. and alliance between the Cheney, Iroquois, and Sioux people. I apologize for my pronunciations. In the Colorado area. What began as chaos regarding missing cattle has now evolved into tit-for-tat killings. The federal force in the area is led by Colonel John Chivington, a man known for his bravery during the Battle of Gloria Pass and barbarity. Damn any man who sympathizes with Indians. I have come to kill Indians, and believe it is right and honorable to use any means under God's heaven to kill Indians. Kill and scalp all, big and little. Nits make lice. So when he came across a village belonging to Black Kettle, it doesn't matter that's flying the American flag, and a white flag. It doesn't matter that's filled with civilians. All the better. They are easier targets. I refused to fire, and swore that none but a coward would. For by this time, hundreds of women and children were coming towards us, and getting on their knees for mercy. By the end of the day, over 160 innocents will be slaughtered by Chivington's cohort. Ending the week with some politics, Attorney General Edward Bates has resigned because he wanted the appointment of Chief Justice, but President Lincoln has indicated he will nominate former Secretary of Treasury Simon P. Chase instead of his top law official. Bates will be replaced by James Speed of Kentucky, who has no background worth mentioning. I doubt Lincoln would even know him if it wasn't for the fact they are old friends. With Bates' departure, few members of Lincoln's original administration remain. Sickles' time. He waits impatiently for command. Anywhere. Anywhere, please. Just let the Devil Dan give the rebels hell. That's where the week ends. And by all means, General Hood shouldn't have an army. This isn't a comment on his lack of ability to lead, though there is that. But at this point, the Army of Tennessee is held together by spite. 6,000 casualties. This war has seen some very high numbers. But at this point in the war, it's inexcusable. Hood believes to retreat would mean the mass desertion from every division to the point where he wouldn't even have a regiment. And I think he is right. At this point, Lee is the only Confederate commander with a fighting force. Everyone else has a mob. Hi, it's Jonathan Teagan, the entire Civil War Week by Week team. I hope you had a good Thanksgiving. I know I did. I hope to see you next week as we continue this war into 1865 and through my finals, at least for the series.